your name, sir?
My name is Joseph Hoffman, Joe.
Okay. Mr. Zheng?
Good afternoon, Mr. Hoffman. Can you introduce yourself and your occupation to the jury, please?
Again, I'm Joe Hoffman. I'm currently the Executive Vice President of the Transit Authority.
What, if any other positions have you held in the Transit Authority?
I've had quite a few. Do you want me to go through all of them, or?
Yes, please.
I started working for the Transit Authority back in 1988. I started as a clerk, then actually quit that job because I didn't like it. I went to trade school during that time, and then I came back in 1992 as an electrician. It was a car maintainer electrician, CME was the title, I believe. I was there for about 6 years, and then I became a junior foreman, and then I kept working up, became a superintendent, general superintendent, eventually chief mechanical officer, and then now eventually I'm executive vice president of the Transit Authority.
That is quite a long list of occupations here, but I wanna refer you back to your duties as an electrician.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just describe to us what that entailed?
Yeah, so the CME, the electrician position, I dealt with electricity. And the job, I was stationed at the 207 overhaul shop at the time. And we were primarily tasked with troubleshooting burnouts and overhauls. So the overhaul shop is where the train cars themselves are sometimes like pulled apart all the way back down to like control panels. So the burnouts, again, if there was any shortages or anything like that in the system, we'd be responsible to identify the problem, troubleshoot it, make sure it got solved, so the trains would be put back together again, kind of from that really basic level all the way up.
Did trade school taught you to do all that?
No, not entirely. Like, I had worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad system before. I worked for the Transit Authority, so part of the reason I went back to school is just to get up to speed for that. So I had that help for sure, but then being in the overhaul shop, I got a lot of both informal and formal training from the Transit Authority. They made sure they invested in us to get the training that we needed to do the job well, and to help us kind of succeed and have a career within the Transit Authority.
When you said the TA invested in you formally, what is that?
So we still both formal and informal mentorship. Like, I had a great mentor when I first started the job. So it's a mixture of both of those things.
When you said you had a mentor in 2007, who was this mentor?
It was Richard Buffington, who was there at the time. He's now since retired, but he's been around longer than I have been. And he, not only do I appreciate him on a personal level, but he really took me under his wing and made sure I understood the job. Because I was there 6 years as an electrician before I became a junior foreman. So I'm very thankful for the experience and just the training that he gave me specifically.
And then now you said you were a foreman after 6 years as a CME. What was a foreman? What were you doing?
So it's just kind of the higher level, but it's still a very hands-on position. So I'm still working in the different shops, and when I say different shops, I've worked in almost every shop that I'm a junior foreman. So it's an important part of it, the training too, is so I still do the hands-on work of learning the different systems, electricity, and it could be anything from brake systems to interior illumination, to control panels, all that kind of fun stuff. But I was moved around a bunch of different shops at that time as well too. So I started to have a little more oversight over some other people's work in addition to my own work.
Was that normal procedure for you to move like that? That seems like a lot of stuff.
No, it was very normal procedure to do that. Part of it was to get specific training on the IRT lines. I guess that's worth noting is that the subway system's not one kind of train. All the different lines have we have different kinds of trains, and that's partly just the way the system was built back in the day. So that transfer around to the different shops really is purposeful to make sure that we gain the skill set and the knowledge and technical know-how to make sure that we know how to work and service and operate on any of the train lines that we might be assigned to at a given time.
And you were foreman for how long?
believe I was foreman for about another 8 years. I honestly can't remember. It's time so.
So roughly 6 years CME, 8 years as foreman, and then so 14 years you became a general superintendent. Is that right? And what was your job as general superintendent?
So there it became more managerial for sure. So it was less daily tasks, being on the line with other workers. So I'd oversee becomes people under you, people under them, making sure that people have the physical resources to do their job. So whether it's the tools or just the equipment, and also making sure that the job is being done and being done well on time, and certainly up to safety, and making sure that people are getting the attention that they need to make sure the job is getting done.
Now as a VP, what do you do?
I sit at my desk in J Street. It's even further removed from the day-to-day operations, right? So I'm not typically going down to the line, though I do try to visit the shops as much as I can because I enjoy it, but it's also that's where the work is being done, and that's what I am responsible for as VP. So I'm overseeing the managers who are overseeing the people who are doing the work.
How many deputy superintendents were under your branch?
I'm now as VP with the system, but so before when I was, you asked me when I was like,
As a vice president.
Do you have the microphone on, Mr. Zheng? Can you move it a little closer?
Yes. Mr. Hoffman, how many deputy superintendents do you have under your branch as a vice president?
Well, the system, the transit system. I don't have any direct. Deputy superintendents don't directly report to me. So a few branches down, so I have all the deputy superintendents follow back up to the VP spot.
From your wealth of experience in the transit authority, in your opinion, what is some necessary knowledge of deputy superintendent to do your job?
Deputy superintendent, they need to know the trains, they need to know the system, they need to know how each train car works, they need to know when a part is getting before it's getting worn down. And sometimes, I guess, with that specifically is that the manufacturer we might get the part from, they're like, oh, this is going to last until this date. We don't ever want to wait till that date because then it's going to be far too late for us to do anything. So part of it is to make sure that that kind of wear and tear is being managed and looked at. Being able to troubleshoot a problem when it happens, because ultimately everything does funnel down to safety, right? Because the public's going to be riding the train, so everything is safe. So we're making sure that the troubleshooting happens now in the moment, so it gets fixed then and there. So you'll be able to know what the problem is, be able to fix it, and be able to make sure it's get done on time, and the overlap of all those different areas, and also just like the public appearance of the cars, make sure that they're clean, that the right signage is up, that the interior illumination, the AC is working. So it's really need to know how a train car works.
What, if any, were your impressions of Ms. Leibovitz as a deputy superintendent?
I knew Ms. Leibovitz was coming to us from an administrative background, and she had like decades of experience, not just within the TA, but elsewhere within the city. And so we were very excited that she was going to bring really some great skills and experience as an administrator. And then when she made the transition from that administrative role to the operational role, we became aware of some of the performance issues while she was at Corona, not just hers, but the shop. And that's ultimately, as I kept moving up, my view had become bigger and bigger and bigger. So when I was like down on the line, I could notice that somebody was screwing up and be able to correct it. As I moved up, I was just more looking at the larger picture more and more. So when I knew she moved over into the operational role, I saw some issues at Corona, and then when she was at 240th, I saw some issues at the shop as well. So.
Just back up a little bit. You said you saw some issues. Did you personally, like, observe her?
No, I never saw Ms. Leibovitz like physically working on the line. But like I said, when I go to visit the shops, I'm much more concerned about, is the work getting done? Is it getting done on time? What is like the general morale of the shop? Are people, I don't want to say are people smiling, because not everybody's always happy at work, but are people generally like happy and okay and like doing the work and get done without being miserable? So that's a big thing I do look for, is making sure that's consistent. And mainly again, like, is the work getting done in a way that's not going to impede visited, it's pretty much a mess. Nothing was getting done on time. There's a lot of backlog that's being pushed into different shifts. As you can imagine, that just adds up and adds up. It just compounds the problem. There was issues, and it was reported up to me, there's issues with how things are being cleaned. There's issues about safety, about issues with the brakes, and there's issues both about like how brakes were being installed, and there was a pretty big concern because the brake shoe was found in the street underneath an elevator track.
And who was the deputy superintendent in charge when there was a brake shoe issue?
That would be for inspections.
And who was the deputy superintendent for inspections at the time?
Diane Leibowitz was.
What, if any, impressions do you have of Diane Leibowitz addressing this issue?
I never spoke directly to her about it. I just basically, as in the position I was at the time, as the chief mechanical officer, so I fix it, take care of it, find out why it happened, never let it happen again.
Why do you think it happened?
It was reported to me there seemed to be an issue with how brake shoe keys were being installed, that they were being compromised, their sort of their physical integrity, how well they're holding things together is compromised of how they're being installed.
Then would a deputy superintendent that's properly trained technical skill will be able to identify this issue?
They should be able to identify and fix it, yes.
Mr. Hoffman, I would like to just move on a little bit to the transfer. What, if anything, did you do to address, what did you know of a transfer?
Yes, I'm the one who initiated the transfer from the 240th shop.
Why did you transfer her?
I transferred her because she needed more training. That when she made that transition from the operational to the, from the administrative side to the operational side, there's clearly a larger skill gap than I was aware of, and I think other folks were aware of. And we wanted to make sure she got that training so she could still continue and succeed in her role as the DSI or the deputy superintendent.
Why so essential?
I'm having trouble hearing you, Mr. Zheng.
I'll go closer. Why the 207 shop?
The 207 shop, like you said, it's not just because I was there, that's where I started, but it's the overhaul shop, like I mentioned, and that's where cars are pulled apart, and that the person, you're going to see everything about the car, so it's the best place to get the big picture view of how a car operates, and thought it would be the best place for her to get that experience.
When did you inform Ms. Leibowitz of her transfer?
I informed her is early December. It was the day, it was December 3rd when I had a series of meetings to talk about the 240th shop. I had several meetings that day, and she was one of the meetings I had scheduled for that day.
When you said you had several meetings on December 3rd, can you walk us through your day?
It was primarily to talk to the folks who were assigned to 240th to let them know that I was effectively blowing up the shop, that I was going to make a lot of changes, and so I was really concerned with how everything was being handled at the shop, not just the work being done. As mentioned before, the morale and the state of the shop was a mess.
And this was with your team?
So it was with the management team, so it would have included the assistant chief mechanical officers, and it would have included the general superintendents. And so I started meeting with them to let them know what was happening. And we had a meeting with Ms. Leibowitz, and I also had a meeting with Mr. Woodley that day about the same subjects.
Do you dismiss your management team before meeting with Ms. Leibowitz?
Excuse me, can you repeat the question?
Did you dismiss your management team when you met with Ms. Leibowitz?
Dismiss as in
like kick them out of your
Oh
office?
no, they were all present for all those meetings.
And when you told Ms. Leibowitz of her transfer, what was your impression of her?
Frankly, she was not happy, and perhaps understandably so. It's as common as transfers are, and as helpful as it can be to somebody's training. People get attached to places. I know she worked at 240th when she was in an administrative role, so she may have had it finished in the spot, but kind of as hard as it sounds, I can't manage people's emotions about that, but I know she was upset, and she raised issues and concerns that why she was being transferred, and I explained to her to make sure she got the training I felt she never received.
And did she get any training at the 207 shop?
I I made sure she had a mentor to work underneath, and the nature of the 207 shop itself was to make sure she had that hands-on experience, to make sure she could lead a team better.
Do you have any specifics of what kind of training she got in 207?
I believe it was laid out in both in her NPR, and I made sure she was getting mentorship from Richard Buffington at the time when she transferred to 207.
Do you remember any specific training that Richard specified?
I can't at this moment now.
Would a mentor report refresh your recollection?
Sure.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Let's have counsel approach the bench about this all kind of. And jurors, if we had a real trial in court, we might excuse the jurors to talk about this document, but I'm going to try to do it with well, if I turn off my mic, then you won't. So let's handle it this way. There's an issue here about that we've discussed with the lawyers privately about whether they can use a certain document. So normally in court, we would dismiss the jurors to argue about the document because the question is whether you get to see it. For this kind of trial, I'm going to open the window and allow you to hear that conversation. Have I said that clearly? All right. But still, stay up here as though we're having a secret call about it, but don't worry, they're going to hear us. Now, we talked about this document prior to, and we decided it was hearsay, I think. So what are your intentions here?
It's to refresh Mr. Hoffman's knowledge of the mentorship that he's received.
And has he testified that he needs his recollection refreshed about it?
Yes, Your Honor, I asked him if he remembered this. I asked him if something to refresh his memory.
All right. I'm going to ask, if you're going to show him that, I'm going to ask you to be more specific than that. And you can ask him whether this report would refresh his recollection. And then the document's not coming into evidence, nor am I going to allow you to feed the document to Mr. Hoffman so he can testify about what Mr. Buffington wrote. So you can do what you want to do with care, and I'm going to be watching you. Okay.
Your Honor, I think
Oh.
that deposition testimony would be more appropriate than that many report.
Well, anything can be used to refresh his recollection. And what's not going to happen here is we're not going to have this witness talk about things he's reading. We're going to talk about what his memories are of things. So I'm not, yeah, okay. So we're taking one question at a time. And you see, folks, we're talking about what can be used to the jury and what's inappropriate.
Mr. Hoffman, will a mental report refresh your memory?
Yes, it would.
Of what, Mr. Hoffman? Of what?
Of the training that I wanted to make sure Ms. Leibovitz received.
All right, let's back up. What's the topic, Mr. Zheng?
The topic here is the training that Ms. Leibovitz received when she was transferred to
Subsequent to the transfer.
Yes.
All right, and you've asked the witness if reading Mr. Buffington's memo would refresh his recollection as to what, did you know at any time what training Ms. Leibovitz received, Mr. Hoffman?
I did, Your Honor, yeah.
All right, and Mr. Zheng's going to show you a document, and we're going to see if it refreshes your memory. If it doesn't refresh your memory, that'll be the end of it. All right,
Your Honor, may I approach the
you
witness?
may.
Mr. Hoffman. Read the first paragraph. You can digest that.
Just the first paragraph you've asked Mr. Hoffman? I thought I heard you ask Mr. Hoffman to read. All right, are you done reading that first short paragraph, Mr.
I am.
Hoffman? All right, you have a question, Mr. Zheng?
Yes, Mr. Hoffman. So, what various shops or
Hold it. Did the document Mr. Zheng show you refresh your memory about what the training Ms. Leibowitz received after she was transferred?
It did.
All right. Now, all right.
Was it a fair and accurate,
Well, hold it. And what training did she receive, Mr. Hoffman, after she was transferred? To your recollection, not Mr. Buffington's memo, to your recollection, what training do you understand she received after the transfer?
The significant training that she received was being assigned to the different shops, the different desks within the shop to make sure she had a holistic understanding of the train operation, so that she's moved around between the different shop or desks in that shop.
Okay.
and Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Buffington assigned her to these various shops, right?
That would have been under his purview, yes.
We're gonna move on, Mr. Hoffman, we're gonna move on to NPRs. What, if any, involvement do you have with employees' NPRs?
Now I only have, involvement right now as executive vice president is only anybody who sits immediately below them. I will initiate those NPRs for those folks.
What, if any, involvement do you have with Ms. Leibowitz's 2020, 2021's NPR?
I became aware of her. I also knew she would be undergoing an annual review, but I became aware of her 2020-21 NPR and her concerns with it after Hector Perez, who was one of the APMOs, came to me and said that he had spoken with Ms. Leibowitz and she was upset about it, had questions, and I told Mr. Perez, let's get on with this, and so I met with her, I believe it was the very next day after I spoke with Mr. Perez.
And when you say let's get on with it, what does that say?
That typically, even when I was CMO, if people are coming to me to talk about their NPRs, they're upset. So I wanted to make sure we dealt with it as soon as we could to start talking about it and get that processes moving that might need to be put in place.
And you spoke to Ms. Leibowitz?
I did. She came to my office.
And what was that conversation like?
She was, again, upset, not screaming at me or anything, but she was clearly upset and wanted to know what was happening with her NPR. And I told her I would look into it.
And did you look into it?
I did.
And what did you find out?
That there was some ratings that I felt that she didn't deserve, and I assumed since she was coming to me that she wanted things changed. We have an appeal process, so I was operating under those sort of parameters. And as both CMO and as vice president, I'm at the end of that road. So any changes I would make would be final. So I looked at it and I made sure that what I saw there I felt was accurate and appropriate. And I felt that some of it wasn't. So I made some changes to it.
And what changes did you make?
I changed some of her internal ratings in sub areas to good. And I changed her overall rating for the 2020-21 year also to a good.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense wants to publish Joint Exhibit 9.
Yeah, okay, if that's in evidence, you may. You're gonna put it on the screen for Mr. Hoffman?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. I'm sure Mr. Hoffman can't read that. All right, very good.
Let's see here.
Mr. Hoffman,
What is that, Mr. Hoffman? Joint Exhibit 9.
It's moving, sorry. Your Honor.
Right.
Here, let me start. There we go.
This is Ms. Leibowitz's management performance review or NPR for 2020 through 2021.
Okay.
I would like to refer the court to page 4. Where's page? That's page 3. Mr. Hoffman, is that your initial on the NPR?
Those are, yes.
And is that the changes you made to Ms. Leibowitz's NPR?
It is. I struck out the M for marginal. I signed it good.
I would like to refer the court to page 4.
Try to keep your voice up, Mr. Zheng.
And you did the same here.
Good.
Correct. That's the good and from marginal to good.
I would like to refer the court to page 5. And you change Ms. Leibowitz's marginal grade to good. That's your signature.
Those are my initials. Yes, but I made that change.
Mr. Hoffman, can you speak to Mr. Easter about the changes you made?
We had a conversation about it, yes.
And what was that conversation like?
I told him I made the changes because I felt that Diane was being sort of measured against standards that weren't reflective of the situation she was put in. So that's why I made the change from from marginal to good. I didn't think it was right or fair for us to evaluate her when she hadn't received the proper training to perform to her fullest capabilities. And he said he disagreed and that he thought she should receive the margin.
Who has the final say, employees NPR?
It's considered final when the vice president signs it.
So
In this instance, I had the final say.
when you sign it, it's finalized.
It's finalized after the vice president signs it.
One last question, Mr. Hoffman. What was the final grade that Ms. Lieber was received in 2020?
She received a good.
No further questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. Is there cross-examination for Mr. Hoffman?
Yes, Your Honor.